Welcome to Construction Cashflow. I'm your host, Stu Davidson, and if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
The way construction works right now, we are democratizing it in a way that it has never been done before. Artificial bottlenecks, that's what's happening in construction as well. People with the ability and the intent to deliver are not being allowed to deliver on the projects. The contractor bankruptcies, misuse of funds in supply chain, money not reaching at the bottom of the chain, unforeseen revisions coming up. I would kind of like to stick out for the main contractor over here as well. They don't have to worry about subcontractor calls on Friday evenings for not being paid. Main contractors can really supercharge their growth. The maximum they did last year was 500,000 of construction. Now they're doing 500,000 a month. The developers are good at cash management. They are good at raising money. They're not good at construction. Contractors are good at construction, but money management isn't their best skill. That the money is coming from the developer, the day it's released from the developer, it will hit their bank accounts directly. So they keep on working on the project for longer because they have the security of payment. The main contractor, subcontractor can add a payroll provider down the chain as well. So the payroll provider can actually see the money is going to come in from the developer direct.
In this show, we ask our guests to tell us their story. Tell us a little bit about their background, how they got to where they are today, how they develop their product, their services, their ideas. And we discuss how that can affect construction cash flow and other areas of construction. And also to give us an idea of how we might make things better and give you a few tips and ideas to take away with you. And listen to the end where you'll find out more about them, more about our guests, about what motivates them, what inspires them, and hopefully that'll inspire you too. And always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. In this episode, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Nishant Singh. Nishant is a serial entrepreneur and problem solver. He's founded multiple companies within the construction supply chain and knows full well the problems of late payments and cash flow problems. He's got a keen interest in finding solutions for this problem, and this is something that we'll discuss in this episode. So without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Nishant Singh. Hi Nishant, it's really great to have you with us today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Stuart. How about yourselves?
I'm great. I'm really looking forward to seeing how things have gone with you. So tell us about your story, Nishant. You know, the challenges, the ups and downs, the journey, if you like, from how you got to where you are today. Because I know you're an entrepreneur by background, and you're developing new products and services and ideas. So yeah, so over to you, Nishant. You know, tell us your story.
Well, yeah, first of all, thanks for the opportunity. It's a really long story. I don't know how to put it shortly, but let's try. So yeah, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I have worked in the real estate industry. I have made multiple companies that I have profitably exited out of in home automation, elevators, lifts, and yeah, there were some problems that I used to face in those companies, which I'm solving now, which essentially is that we are protecting everyone in a construction supply chain in terms of money. So that we are protecting the developers, we are protecting the subcontractors, and my journey till from where I was till this has actually been uh, of facing these problems myself. So so
Mhm.
it's really nice and it's really fulfilling that I'm working on something that has been my own problem, and I can see that across my journey, I can see that it was everyone else's problem as well. So yeah, if I talk about the journey of NFund, which is the platform that we are building right now, and which is actually operational, uh, construction is not easy. Construction is not easy, and the journey in construction, especially for me, has been of a lot of learnings, and that's like observe, listen, and then move forward. Yeah.
It is a problem, and one of the reasons I started construction cash flow, because I recognised that cash flow is the key, one of the key issues in construction. It's one of the ones that leads to delay, and it chokes wealth creation, and quite often that cash flow doesn't get to the place that it needs to get to in the supply chain when it needs to get there. That tends to choke the system as well. And as the supply chain is made up of many, many, many small businesses, it affects small business owners, their families, and the community as a whole. So it's amazing that you're in this line of work, that you're looking to support the cash flow in construction. So tell us a bit more about M Fund, what it does, and who's it for.
So Enfend is a platform which helps developers, general contractors, and subcontractors be safe uh, and keep their money safe while they're working on a project. It essentially helps uh, contractors and subcontractors grow 10x with limited or no need of working capital. So, and it helps developers protect themselves from a lot of risks like the contractor bankruptcies, misuse of funds in supply chain, money not reaching at the bottom of the chain, unforeseen revisions coming up. Yeah, so it kind of protects the contractors as well. They don't have to worry about subcontractor calls on Friday evenings for not being paid because there's a lot of transparency in using the end fund system itself on the supply chain. So essentially, it kind of is the backbone of money movement in construction projects, which is kind of protecting everyone in the supply chain. And probably we can move forward and look at it uh, later down in the talk from everyone's perspective and every problem's perspective, as in how it helps and how it works. Yeah, but we have had an amazing launch, and the traction has been amazing for us.
That's fantastic. And what would you say? So how does N Fund actually achieve that? How does it protect the cash flow and advance the cash flow in construction?
So yeah, if you just think of a supply chain wherein there is a developer, a main contractor, and subcontractors, there would be payment requests that contractor provides to the developer, and then the developer would kind of create a payment certificate after checking all the work and the invoices and pay the main contractor. Uh, this system is opaque, as once the main contractor has been paid, there is no view of where that money is going. And what Enfund does is it has incorporated all these payment requests and payment certification into a very transparent system that integrates with accounting. So what we do is on the Enfund platform, the main contractor can upload a payment request with a complete breakdown of the subcontractors as well. And when the developer approves this payment request, they can actually see which main contractor will be paid what, and also pay them direct using the platform itself. So the contractors get a chance to kind of differentiate themselves and say that, hey, I'm giving you complete transparency and control over how your money is reaching down the chain. And the developer is getting this control and transparency over money moving down the chain. And this is actually beneficial for both these parties. And that's what the system does. It gets the subcontractors gets paid direct from the developer based on these payment requests that go on the platform and the certifications that happen on the platform. And they have all the subcontractor data built in to it. So yeah, that's essentially what the platform is. By doing this, we are actually solving a lot of problems and eventualities that may arrive, which we can go deeper into later on.
Yeah, because I know as a client's from a client's QS perspective that once a main contractor is employed, you can't really see what's going on down the chain. There's a contractual war there, and if I'm responsible for the budget, I want to have control over the money flowing down the line, but that's kind of passed on to the contractor. And sometimes you then relying on the contractor who's got his own agenda of making profit and he's interested not necessarily sticking with the budget. He's interested in making sure that he makes a profit. But my interest would be to make sure we're delivering within budget. So if I can't control the cash down the line, and I can't see the cash, I can't see where it's moving, and I can't see that there's any problems till the last minute, then a system like nFund would be very useful if I was representing a developer and managing that process.
Yeah, definitely. But I would kind of like to stick out for the main contractor over here as well. My next 10 projects that are in pipeline with GDV of over 80 million, they have been brought in by the main contractors. And the reason for that is main contractors can really, really supercharge their growth using nFund. If I take an example of one of the main contractors that's doing a scheme of 64 flats right now, the maximum they did last year was 500,000 of construction. Now they're doing 500,000 a month on nFund. That's how supercharged company can be if they use nFund. So essentially, if you are a main contractor and you're going and bidding for a project, there are two things that will affect your winning the bid. One is your ability in terms of delivering the construction, and second is the ability to manage the funds. And with nFund, what happens is all that matters now is your ability to deliver the construction, the quality, the actual development. And we take the entire fund element out of it, wherein you don't have to worry about money anymore, which will be paid direct by the developer. And as you already said, developers would love it, and you as a developer's QS would love it. What we are doing is helping our main contractors kind of increase their turnover by 5 to 10x in a single year.
How does that increase how does that scale the business? How does that do the 10x?
So let's assume you're a main contractor. Okay. If you had to fund the construction yourselves and then go back to the developer to get paid every time, okay, you would end up being reliant on your own books, and that's not something that we want any main contractor to do. The developers are good at cash management, they're good at raising money, they're not good at construction. Contractors are good at construction, but money management isn't their best skill. So the way we are doing it is the main contractors can as I said, just create payment requests on the platform, which go to the developer. And when the developer accepts, the subcontractors can see the money is going to come direct from the developer. This kind of pacifies the subcontractors, even if the money coming in is coming late. So even if they are not paid for say 15 days after the due date, a lot of times the subcontractors would assume that the main contractor is not paying them. But with Enfund, they can clearly see that the money is coming from the developer. The day it's released from the developer, it will hit their bank accounts directly. So they keep on working on the project for longer because they have the security of payment, and they can see that whatever the holdup is in terms of paperwork or in terms of anything else from the development funder up the chain, it's not actually people holding on to their money. They're still going to be paid. So it becomes really easy for the main contractor to go in, take more projects without having to put their own money in for construction.
So how does it affect the payment times down the line? Because traditionally, you'd have a main contractor on a 30-day payments, and these payments would get longer down the line to the subcontractor to say 54 days, 90 days. How does the system improve on that? I know a lot of subcontractors really they pay their labour on a weekly basis, and sometimes have to wait 90 days to get paid from a main contractor. How could they get down to maybe 14-day payments?
So I can see two separate things in this question that you asked, and if I understand it correctly, one is the payroll bit of it, and second is the difference in credit terms between developer and main contractor, and the main contractor and the subcontractor. So if I take one of them first, let's talk about the payment terms between the main contractor and subcontractor. Now, these payment terms generally would be longer, considering that the time period between the acceptance of work and approval of the subcontractor invoice by the main contractor, aggregation of all the works of the subcontractor, and then a combined payment certificate request going up the chain to the developer. So essentially, there would be still be a difference between the payment terms. But generally, what would happen is that the due dates with extended payment terms of the subcontractor and the due date with the shorter payment term of the main contractor would coincide around the same time on the system for the payments to happen directly to the subcontractors. You're taking into account that it takes longer for the subcontractor to get paid, and it takes shorter for the main contractor to get paid, but the subcontractor invoice comes in a lot earlier into the system than a main contractor's invoice, which comes in a lot later down the chain when a lot of work has been done, and also a lot of work by multiple subcontractors has been done. So essentially, when you use the system, you will see that it doesn't become a problem at all. It automatically solves itself.
That sounds interesting, to align the payment dates, and as you say, work still needs to be approved, certified. I think does it provide opportunity for, say for example, you was checking the work on let's take an extreme example, say a daily basis, and you knew at the end of each week that the quality of the work was done to the specification, and they were on target time wise. Is the system able to set up to align payments on a weekly basis, for example?
Oh yeah. So there is no limitation on the number of payments that can go through a month on the system. You can align it on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, monthly basis, and if you want, you can align it like on a 3-day basis as well. So it's up to the contract and up to the developer, main contractor, and subcontractor as if when they want to execute the payments. Our experience has been that the certifications go in between 25 to 30th of the month generally. In some cases, it has been a 14-day payment cycle wherein the certifications happen every 14 days. I haven't seen a shorter cycle going through the platforms still. It can go. No one is doing it right now. But if I talk about the payroll, that I missed in the last answer, that happens on a weekly basis. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there are payroll. So this chain which starts from developer, main contractor, subcontractor, can add a payroll provider down the chain as well. So the payroll provider can actually see the money is going to come in from the developer direct. So they can forward fund the payroll, actually pay up the people on the weekly basis and wait for being paid by the developer direct.
That sounds like a massive step forward, because it's always a problem with from a subcontract perspective that they're paying wages on a weekly basis, say for bricklayers or carpenters, etc. Yet they're waiting a long time and having to bankroll the project for maybe a couple of months before they get paid. And that's always been a problem. But if the system, as you say, can the specialist contractor can add his own payroll to the system, so that the money can filter down in time in order to pay his labor on time?
So we cannot process payments to people right now, individuals right now. So a payroll provider coming in at bottom of the chain and then paying the labor or the employees is what the subcontractors are doing right now. They kind of employ a payroll company that does it for them. And what we are doing with the payroll company right now is they want us to put them within the chain, so they can have this clarity and confidence of moving ahead with payments. But this cannot have. We cannot give individual payments to individuals. It has to be a company or a firm or an entity that we can pay to.
On that basis, is it based on is there a project bank account, so that the contractor, the developer, the contractor, the subcontractors know that the money is there to be drawn down? How does it work? Is it on a project bank account, or is it some other system?
No, so we don't need a project bank account for the system to work. Okay. On all of the projects till date, there is a funder funding the project on top of the chain. So when the QS from the developer side says, yes, the work has been done and the valuation has been done, and the IMS from the funder comes in and kind of validates the work done, there is a pool of money sitting with the bank that they are going to release on the milestone, and the subcontractors know that there is this bank sitting on top that is really credit worthy. And when the money is released by them, no one in the chain can stop us from getting it. So yeah, that's kind of the assurance that the subcontractors have, that they can see that the money is going to come direct from the developer's account to them once the funder releases it. And in some cases, it can come to their bank account directly from the funder. So in those cases, no one in the chain can actually take the money out and use it for anything else, and it will directly come to them.
Yeah, I like that, because it does prevent cash farming and robbing Peter to pay Paul on other projects, something that is prolific in construction.
Actually, I remember your story about St. Paul's that you told me. I'd really love if you could bring that story in and tell everyone over here.
Yes. So robbing Peter to pay Paul, it goes back 400 years to when St. Paul's were being constructed. They were borrowing money from St. Peter's to build St. Paul's. So that's kind of where robbing Peter to pay Paul comes from. And it's still the same today. So companies down the supply chain are robbing Peter to pay Paul. So they're robbing from, or they're taking money out of other projects that they've got on to fund, say, materials on this project. And when they get paid on this project, they're going to use that money to fund to pay for labour and materials on another project. So the risk, in fact, there's a real risk for developers traditionally, in that they don't appreciate that the money that they've paid their contractor is actually going out of their project. And quite often you see the situation, if a contractor goes bust, he hasn't already paid the subcontractors, and the developer loses that money because the money's leaked out of his project. So I can see the advantages of this system is that your money's not going to leak out of the project. It's going to be used for what it's meant to be. So it kind of brings a much more security for the funder, for the developer, and also for the supply chain, because they know the money's they've just got to really, got to make sure they perform, do the work, carry out their commitments, and concentrate on the quality of their work. And the money is there, rather than the money going out of the project and then they're waiting on tender hooks for it to come back in.
Looping back to that 10x growth thing, now just think a main contractor who has a lot of money in the bank account, going to a developer and bidding for a project, but saying, I'm not going to be transparent with you. And a smaller contractor who is like 1/10 of the size of this large contractor, going in and saying, I'll be transparent with you on this system. I'll give you the ability to just get a new contractor in. If I go bust, you will have all the information about all the payments, and you will own everything that the subcontractors have done. Who will the developer choose? Someone who's being honest with them and has the ability to deliver, or someone who says, I'm not going to let you know anything about what I'm doing. Just look at my book and be happy. That's how they get larger projects. And we have actually helped contractors win huge projects, like with a balance sheet of $500,000, when a project worth 10 million to be delivered in a year.
That's amazing. That's a complete revolution.
Like Uber, like large taxi companies kind of having monopoly over the market, and then Uber coming in and saying anyone with a car can actually give you this service. Why create a bottleneck around things, artificial bottlenecks? That's what's happening in construction as well. People with the ability and the intent to deliver are not being allowed to deliver on the projects, while someone would be taking advantage of the developer by not letting them see what's happening in the project. We are changing it. We are revolutionizing the way construction works right now. We are democratizing it in a way that it has never been done before.
I love that term, democratizing it. I hadn't seen it done like that before. I hadn't seen the opportunity, not as sophisticated as you're discussing there with N Fund. I can see that it de-risks a project. There are contractors out there, large contractors out there, that their business plan requires them to put money through the books because they do use their funds for cash farming. I call it cash farming. I don't mean that necessarily derogatory, but it's they get paid, they go and buy developments, and then they bring money back into the system, into the projects, and sometimes that's how they remain competitive for work. But their main business model isn't necessarily that they want to be constructors or builders. They're investors, and they are obviously listed as contractors, but their main model is to get as much money through the books as possible. Now, I'm not a keen fan of that personally, because I don't think it has the best interests at heart for the quality and the delivery of the creation of wealth in the community as a whole and down the line. I like the idea that you've come up with here of transparency. Do you have any objections? Do you see any objections from contractors whereby using this system, they're not getting the turnover through their books, they're not getting the they're not getting the volume of turnover that maybe they would normally need if they wanted to fund their projects? Have you come across that, or is that a problem, or is there an accounting method of getting around that?
So the way the system works, even though the payment is going direct, the turnover is still going through the contractor's book. It's just that they're asking the payment to go direct. So we do not reduce the amount of turnover that goes through any contractor's book. So no matter how big the contractor, they can use it and still have the same amount of turnover going through their books. What we are doing is making everyone safe, not just the developers, but the contractors as well. Just think of a situation wherein developer is late in paying the main contractor, and the main contractor is getting all these calls from subcontractors. And you don't want to have a Friday evening answering 50 calls and saying, yeah, it's going to come in. The contractor has to take these calls. What can he do? He has to maintain the relationship. He has to maintain the morale in the supply chain. And what we are doing is essentially taking it off the head of the main contractor altogether. The main contractor, and we have seen this on the project. Okay, there will be instances where there would be late payments, there would be a signature missing somewhere, there would be a wrong date somewhere in a payment certificate, or the QS will come up with some questions that need to be answered. There would be situations where delays would happen. Okay, but when an end fund is in place, the subcontractors can see that they are going to be paid direct, and they actually are not calling this main contractor all the time. They have this confidence that they will be paid, and so it becomes really easy, and it really becomes safe for the main contractor to actually work on any project if end fund is involved. If I take an example of one of the main contractors, they were doing two projects simultaneously. One was on end fund and the other one was not. The one that wasn't on end fund is now in litigation, and the contractor said, I should have seen the red flag over there when I asked the developer to put this on end fund, and they said no. If you are not ready to be transparent, that means you're hiding something. Why else would you say no to a system that's fair to you and me both? So essentially what end fund is doing is making sure that everything that's in the contract is done. The contract says you're supposed to treat all your suppliers fairly. The contract says you're supposed to pay on time and everything, right? What end fund essentially is doing is be transparent about it. If a contractor says no, I won't be transparent with you, that's something they're hiding. If the developer says no, I won't be transparent with you, I want you to handle all the subcontractors and their calls when I actually don't pay you on time, yeah, don't work with such a developer. As simple as that. Or if you are a developer and the contractor says, no, I won't be transparent with you, I'm going to take your money, and to hell with it, I'll do it whatever I want with it, right? Don't work with that contractor. Yeah.
I think it's a real game changer, and it's something that can change the culture, to make it much more transparent, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be transparent. Have you found that the contract terms around payment, or any of the contract terms that you're contracting in using end fund has changed? Do you think the contract terms over payment become easier? Are they staying the same, or do you think there's room for improvement?
No, there is definitely room for improvement. So generally what we have seen is on the first project, when a developer and a contractor use end fund, they generally use the standard contract terms with 30-day valuations. Okay. But they quickly realize that with end fund, they can have smaller valuation cycles, say 14 days valuation cycles, and actually exploit the best out of it. It's up to the contractor and the developer to have the payment cycles working around the way they make the contract. We don't change the way contracts are written. But what we have seen is because of this digital technology that allows them to exploit the best out of shorter payment cycles, generally on the second project, some of the companies, they prefer to go on shorter cycles of 14 days certifications, like 2 certifications in a month.
One of the things that is spoken around quite often on that issue around payment cycles is moving towards micro milestones. So we'll have milestone payments, but more of them. So there's quite key points in a project where you might want to pay more regularly. It may be for the delivery of certain goods, manufactured goods, materials. It could be any number of things, but micro milestones also is a good way of managing the program. So would end fund be able to accommodate micro milestones, or let's say milestone payments generally, and then maybe would it have the flexibility to doing some level of shorter milestones if that was required?
The short answer is yes, and fund can do that. And I'll give a very, very long answer as well. That's based on the kind of economic situation that we are seeing today. So, uh, what we are seeing is the lead times for delivery of uh, supplies is really, really long right now. And
Mm.
if you are late in ordering, or if you're late in giving the deposit, or if you're late in giving the last payment to a window supplier or a brick supplier, you may end up looking at 24 weeks, 30 weeks lead times. And if you don't do it on time, this might increase. So the best way going forward is to get all your procurement sorted really, really quickly and in a most frictionless manner. And I think micropayments is very important in those cases. So delivery right now is not just dependent, delivery of the project is not just dependent upon how quickly and how well people work on the project. It's now also dependent upon how quickly can you get your goods delivered on the site. And that needs a bit of agility and a bit of flexibility on part of all the parties in the supply chain. And that brings in your point of micropayments, which can solve it. If you look at micropayments and look at it from the perspective of 3 years ago, I don't think any would have really cared before COVID for uh, delays in deliveries, because everything was smooth and sorted. It's not now, and you need to be uh, on your game in terms of ordering what you want, and for that you need to be agile, and for that you need micropayments.
Do you think this agility that you mention in the management of the project, how is that? How do you think M Fund and bringing that agility in, and you pointing out the really important matter of long lead times and making sure that you've got your payments and your deliveries sorted out? How do you think that may be changing the way we manage projects, and how would M Fund be managed from that high developer? Because it seems to me that at that level where the developer, kind of the heartbeat of pumping the cash flow, if you like the heart pumps the oxygen, the blood with the oxygen around the body to where it wants when it's needed. How do you feel that M Fund may be bringing about change in the way that we manage projects?
So, see, agility along with it brings a lot of overhead. And for a developer to do micropayments uh, and for to shorten the lead times, they would need to be involved in seeing where the money is going. Is it going to the bricks guys? Is it going to the windows guys? Doing once a payment certificate a month kind of reduces their overhead cost of oversight. Okay, and having multiple payments, micropayments across the month would increase their oversight overhead substantially. Where nfund comes in is it can allow them to do all of these micropayments without increase in their overhead of overseeing this, because of our digital technology that kind of gets the data from across the supply chain and eliminates the need of incurring this huge cost of oversight, because we are kind of giving that oversight to them in terms of direct payments. So when they say I'm paying you for this bricks, I need to get the bricks on site ASAP. Uh, that's where the payment is going. If you are paying for windows and you want the windows to be on your site as soon as possible, that's where the payment is going through Anfund. So we are kind of eliminating the need of oversight in terms of you pay the main contractor and then you kind of worry about whether the money is going where it's supposed to go or not. So without Anfund, if you do micropayments, if you kind of want to be really agile in ordering things, it would be a huge overhead, and most of the developers would not want it, and that's why it has not happened till date. With Enfund, you can be really agile without incurring this overhead and do all these payments.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Nishant, with the cost of micropayments, because there's been a huge amount of research into micropayments going back some time. And I think it's an amazing way to link it into managing the program on projects. planning ahead. But again, it's been prohibitive in terms of cost. This could be the door that opens up to a whole new world of how we actually run projects and how we structure ourselves as a sector. So yeah, I'd love to have a look at that to see how that works and maybe join the dots up with some of the research that's going on site for the way that we program in works, we program in subcontractors, and we sequence the works. Micro management, micro payments would actually allow us to make the most out of developing technologies such as on-site 3D cameras and cameras that can actually model progress on site and feed that back into the system. And I can see that some of the joints with product like mFund and some of the other products because it's becoming more digital could be joined up in the future and make things a lot more efficient. One of the things that I've been looking at lately is the issue around delay and disruption and keeping records. So as many listeners will know, there's a lot of experts in the field of law and adjudication and looking at disputes with extensions of time, etc., know how complex that can get. And it's about record keeping, and not always the records are kept, and when they are kept, they're not always great. So we're actually leaving it to the adjudicator of the courts or the expert witnesses to go back 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. How can you work out the cause and effect of something that happened 6 months ago where the records are not great? But I can see that with this more digitization that can be improved. In fact, I'm looking at a system at the moment which is for specialist contractors where they can plan and quite simply record the right information at the right time on site. It's called PVA, and it's planned over actual. And nice and simply, they just keep the records, and then that can go into the system to work out loss and expense, payments. It can feed into a system like yours, which would be, in fact, that does bring me on to a point, and a question I wanted to ask you is, how does it deal with variations in terms of cost, variations on site, and adjustments to how those accounts are managed? Does that get managed inside mFund, or is that something that's an interface?
So variation is an interesting topic. After you signed a contract, and when if the developer comes up with a new request that I want to change this, which often happens, or the prices in the market go up, variations will come in. I haven't seen a fixed price contract that was delivered on fixed price yet. So there will be variations. The thing about variations is that's where the problem with trusts come in. So if the main contractor or the developer doesn't trust the main contractor as in what they are asking for in terms of increase in work or increase in the material that would be needed, mFund kind of solves it. So variation happens outside of the platform. You discuss the variation outside of the platform, that this is going to cost more because we are going to actually pay more for the material because of whatever changes you have asked for. What mFund does is allows the developer to be safe in terms of they are paying for the material direct on mFund. So it's easier for them to say yes. Now, it's not always the case that the developer wants to save a bit of money here and there. It's about trust. So if they can clearly see that this is exactly what is being paid for, they'll pay it. And we have actually seen this happen on the system wherein the developer agreed for increase in the costs. I will go loop back to the payments again. What we have worked on a project wherein we asked the contractor to kind of break down the money that was going to go out for the materials rather than paying it every 2 months. We asked them to kind of break it down at 15 day terms so that the payment going out reduces the total net outstanding reduces for every party, and there are deliveries that are constantly happening. If this is followed, it's easier to kind of tackle increase in prices, because the increases in price is going to kind of hit a smaller package of payment that may hit at the later of the chain, rather than you holding on to payment for 2 months and then a bulk of your payment actually being
Mm.
hit by increase in prices. So what we generally also see is that breaking down your payment schedule in smaller payments actually helps you manage the price and revisions, because the revision doesn't happen on a bulk of your procurement but a small part of your procurement that's going through in that cycle.
Absolutely, and that gets back to that we discussed about flexibility, and payments for suppliers direct. It hasn't got to go all the way down through so many different hands to get to the supplier before they release, and you could miss a delivery date. If it's something that's in manufacturing, you could miss it, but you could set that supplier up on the system at the beginning, I should imagine.
Yeah,
And
you can set the supplier up at any point of time. So
yeah.
generally, when the project starts on end fund, you start with the developer and the contractor, and as the project progresses, we keep on adding suppliers. Uh, Most of the times, they are added when the job they did or the material they supplied is part of the milestone payment that's coming next. That's when we generally onboard them. So we don't need to onboard all the supplier in one go. We can onboard them on the go as the project progresses. And you can change the suppliers as well. So you might start a project off with keeping one supplier in mind for Windows, but in somewhere down the line before the window payment has been done or the contract signed, you find a better supplier who is doing it for cheaper or in a better quality. You can, of course, use a second supplier. The system works with any supplier that you add.
So when you mentioned around scalability, it's one thing to talk financially. A developer doing, say, 500,000 or £1 million worth of development, and then they increase to so many millions very quickly using end fund. How do they scale up in terms of supply chain? Because takes a long time to develop a supply chain. Suppliers that are used to working with each other, and contractors are usually very, and I can't say I blame them, possessive of their supply chain, because they take a lot of work and effort to pull a supply chain together. How do you scale? Have you seen the contractors scale their supply chain so quickly and be successful in that?
It all boils down to trust. You need a long time to set up your supply chain, because it takes a long time for subcontractors to trust you. And once they trust you, they work with you on projects. What we are doing on end fund is giving the subcontractor trust that the main contractor is not going to hold on to their payment. Even if it's a new main contractor, I am a bricks supplier or any other subcontractor, and there's a new main contractor I need to work with. The first thing that I will think about is this guy going to hold on to my payments once he's paid? But if I'm on end fund, I clearly see that no one in the chain is holding on to my payments. As soon as they're released, I'm getting them direct. It becomes really easy for me to say yes and give the best rates for the project. Because now I am depending upon the developer who's doing the project and the bank that's funding the project. And the bank and the developer and all the equity investors on top, they want me paid. They don't want me to be starving, right? If there's a system that ensures my survival is directly related to the profits of the guys with the money on top of the chain, yeah, I will do that. So coming back to the scalability issue, if you're ready to give trust, if you're ready to be on and fund, not hide things, anyone will work with you. I would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's a lot more attractive, and I've actually tested this kind of idea of paying supply chains directly from a project bank account perspective, not as technical as the as streamlined and digitized as the system you've got now. And I've found that contractors and subcontractors, particularly subcontractors or specialist contractors, should we say, they say this is brilliant because I know the money's going to be there, and if it's coming to me direct, I'd rather work with this contractor. And I think also, because what I find with specialist contractors or subcontractors is that sometimes they're very, very small businesses. They may be businesses where a tradesman has stepped up and developed a business out of his work, and he might not necessarily have the coding and the accounts coding in place. And he may not have necessarily separated his project bank account from his operations bank account or his general bank account. And do you see this as something that if they sign up to, if they're a subcontractor on this system, it will help them to, or will they have to have an accounting references and codes in place, or is this something that they would get as a result of signing up to the system?
So what ANFund would give them is a complete set of accounts for all the payments that are coming through ANFund, so they can straight away download the report and send it to their accountant or auditor, whoever it might be. Okay, but they still need to have a separate accounting software. It can be Xero or QuickBooks or Sage or whatever they are using in terms of managing their general accounting. So we do not do general accounting for the subcontractors. They will still need to do that themselves, but all the accounting and the ledger entries for everything that happens on ANFund when the money is coming down the chain, we do it on ANFund. They can download it from there.
Yeah, that's going to help a lot. One of the things I'm helping subcontractors with is to organize their record keeping. Keeping records on site, making sure that they've got separate codes for separate jobs, and they're separating out types of expenditure on each of the jobs, and record keeping. So if there's any delays on site, or they're given an instruction on site, that they're recording that. And I've got a system which is PVA, which I'm looking to roll out with with subcontractors. And I think if they have that system as well, that can link into very well with the ANFund, I think it works both ways. The subcontractor wants to work with a contractor that's working on the ANFund system, and the other way around as well. The contractor and a developer would want to work with a subcontractor that's also got some level of organized record keeping process software the other way. So we're kind of developing from both, so kind of, I think it always, with these things, it works both ways. If you're scaling, you do need to have subcontractors that understand the importance of keeping the right records at the right time. So we're not in a position where we don't know who's, because it's all very well to have cash to flow and to have a wonderful system, but if we don't know who's owed what and why, we don't know what caused a delay, or who's kind of responsible for a delay, because we haven't kept the record on a daily basis, then of course we don't know what to plug into the system, because we're going to be trying to work out what the cause and effect was, and where the delay came from. So one of the things I'm looking at from the other end with the subcontractors, which should help contractors scale if they're using ANFund, and they want to scale and they want a reliable supply chain, because they're going to have to, because you spoke about trust with the supply chain and the contractor, but if you're scaling that quickly, you're going to be working with, you're going to need to be finding new subcontractors and new supply chains, and they're going to have to gel quickly. So one of the things I'm working with is the other way, so that the subcontractors are ready to scale and to slot into this scalability that's coming, and this revolution that's coming in the way that we manage and fund and cash flow projects.
So one great thing about ANFund is that if there's a subcontractor who is working on ANFund on one project, they can easily easily work with any contractor that's working on end fund on any other project. So it's kind of like if you are end fund compatible,
Mm.
you can work with other end fund compatible contractors and subcontractors. So your pool to select from increases substantially as soon as you are on end fund.
What would you be looking for to identify somebody, whether it's a contractor or actually, let's go with a subcontractor first. What would you be looking at from a subcontractor to deem them as M fund compatible?
So one, they need to be ready to use the end fund system to get paid. Second is uh, if we are bringing them on end fund and they are working on a project, the contractor needs to be happy in terms of their ability to use them as the subcontractor, because that's the most important bit over there. One part is we are solving the problem of getting paid, but the second bit is actually delivering the work. And that the subcontractor has to do themselves. So they need to be good at what they are doing,
Hmm.
and they actually are good at what they are doing. What
Yep.
happens often is the money bit creates a lot of problems. So if you don't get the money for material on time, and someone is pushing you to deliver something, you might somehow deliver, but you know, and they know, it's going not going to stand when it comes to quality inspections, and then they're going to blame the subcontractor for a shoddy work that they did, and the subcontractor is going to blame them with that you didn't know, paid for it. This is what you get if you don't pay for it,
Mm.
right? So that's what we are solving. So you need to be good at what you're doing, and we'll be good at getting you paid.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
always been my argument for years that, contractors should be good at building buildings. We're not, and going back to what you said at the beginning, we shouldn't really expect them to be cash flow experts or finance experts. We just expect them to build really good buildings, good quality and on time,
Yeah.
and if we can allow them to just focus and concentrate on that, then we take care of with using systems like mFund, we take care of moving the cash. It's got to be much, much, much more efficient, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about money. It's all about money.
Absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to it. So, could you give a few pointers to maybe a contractor, subcontractors listening, as how? I think you've covered most of the, you've given a lot of tips and ideas, but somebody that hasn't used Enfund before and they're thinking of, they think this is a great idea, it's a great conversation, they'd like to be involved. Where can they find out more about
So,
Enfund?
oh, they can set up a meeting with us from our website, or we provide a link with this podcast as well, wherein they can go on the link and then book a meeting with us. And we are more than happy to take our time out and work with you, help you understand it, how it works. Generally, what we have seen is it takes us less time to get them onboarded and working on Enfund than it takes for us to explain to them what Enfund does. Once they see the link, they click it and they onboard it. It's so quick. It takes less than 2 minutes. It's like creating a Gmail account. It's as simple as that.
Oh wow,
Or
that
if you
sounds
have a
great.
Google account, you can just click sign up with Google or sign in with Google,
Yeah.
and it signs you up. So you don't actually even have to put in a lot of details that are needed over there.
Is there a minimum size of project that this would benefit at all to start with? So somebody, a contractor that thinks this is a great principle, great idea, wants to scale his business. Is there a minimum turnover to start with, or can he kind of win a project and get on with it, or how does it work?
So there is no minimum requirement from Enfund, but there might be a requirement from the developers. What we have seen is that when the developer is using Enfund, they do not have very stringent requirement in terms of the minimum work that you have done. They go with lower value of work to select main contractors, and so you can actually get a much bigger project with Enfund than what you would normally get. But it depends upon the developer because they would be choosing the main contractor. What
Yeah,
we
sure.
want from the main contractor is experience and a good track record.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha.
So
So
we are
it's,
not asking. We are not asking. So you can. Your books don't matter. Your ability matters.
would M Fund work with a modular scheme?
Yeah, it does. It does work with the modular scheme. We are working with certain modular providers on the market already. And one of the great things about Enfund is that it's kind of solving that uh, problem with modular, wherein developers are worried about giving advances because
Mm,
the rooms are being made in a factory, and if they're paying the main contractor, they're not actually paying the factory guys. So they actually don't own the rooms that are there in the factory. But with Enfund, when they pay direct, they actually own what's there on the ground.
mm,
So that
yeah.
actually solves a big problem that lies with modular, wherein rather than work happening on the site and everything being delivered on the site, you have a lot of control over what's happening with modular. Uh, it's a quantum jump that happens in terms of construction when the entire bit is delivered and you pull it on a crane and it's kind of fit on top of the previous floor, right? So that quantum jump in terms of delivery can be managed in terms of vesting within fund.
Ah, so that's really interesting. That has always been a problem, the vesting
Yeah,
issue, for many, many years, as far back as I can remember. And if M Fund addresses that issue, which it sounds like it's possibly got a solution to it, that's amazing. And that's something,
even,
I'd,
even where it's not a modular, if someone delivers bricks on your site, okay,
yep,
you still haven't put them on in, they're still lying there, okay. If
yep,
you paid the contractor but the contractor hasn't paid the brick supplier, the bricks still don't belong to you. Even though you paid for the bricks to the
yep,
main contractor, they don't belong to you. That's the problem.
exactly.
And
Yep.
if it's like not bricks but the entire room that is there in being built in the factory for which you paid to the contractor but the supplier was never paid, you don't own a big chunk of what's being built.
How does that work contractually? I suppose you would have to look at from a standard form of contract, maybe have to look at some of the vesting clauses, etc., in the way that they're currently written, in terms of paying the factory direct. In fact, the contract, would there be a separate contract between the developer and the supplier? And would the contractor still get his markup? I suppose that's one of the questions, I suppose, with the contractor, is that he's looking for a markup on the on the work, so how would that be? Have you come across that at all from a contractual perspective? I know that's a bit of a minefield and probably haven't got much time to delve into it today, but have you come across that
Yeah.
at all?
So if I try to answer that, the contractors still get their markup. Only the thing that's supposed to be paid direct to the suppliers would go direct or markup, and the profits and overheads go to the main contractor. We don't change any contract. If it's a JCT contract between the
Mm.
developer and the main contract, it stays that whatever there's the contract between the main contractor and the supplier remains that. We don't change it. The vesting certificates are also provided by the main contractor to the developer. What we are ensuring is that everything is paid for. Because if everything is not paid for, even if you have a contract, you don't own it. If
Mm.
the bit about contract is it can only exist if both parties are delivering on what they're supposed to deliver. Like the supplier is giving you the material and they're getting money against it. If one bit doesn't happen, the contractual obligations have not been completed. So we don't change the contractual obligations, we don't change the contract, we just make sure that the money moves and reaches where it is supposed to for that contract to be valid.
Have you got time for a quick fire round?
Yeah, go on.
to finish off. So this is just a bit of fun, but it's more, more about inspiration and motivation and learning more about you as well. And I know it's one that listeners love this part of it as well. So here we go. So first question, Nishant, how do you start your day?
Well, I start my day thinking about my business. So I wake up. The first thing that happens is, okay, what am I going to do when I start my office, and it stays with me throughout my daily routine. Yeah.
When are you most productive?
I'm most productive at 2 times in the day. One is like at the starting of the office time, and one is at the end. Because at the starting, I want to really do a lot of things, and at the end of the day, I'm panicking about not having done all of that, and so the 2 bits are most productive.
What's something new happening in your life right now?
So the payroll thing, that's something new that we are bringing in that we hadn't envisaged before. And we had this meeting with the payroll company, and they said we want to be part of this chain, and the chain is now extending down like multiple tiers. And that's amazing. And we want people to be paid. That was the whole idea. We want money to be in people's pockets rather than being held in some big corporation.
What does adventure look like to you?
Well, with this roller coaster ride of this startup, the only I think this has been really adventurous. This, like, sticking your head out with an idea, saying this is how things should work, and opening up yourselves to criticism and opening yourselves to failure, and keep failing till like you get your first customer who says, wow, I loved it. So that entire journey of failing, being criticized, and still having the guts to say, no, I know, I will change it, I will pivot it, I will chisel this idea a little bit more and bring it in the shape that, yeah, it works. That journey is a roller coaster ride, and that's a huge adventure.
What thing would you love to do that might surprise your friends and family?
I really, really want to do some adventure sport. I haven't ever done adventure sports in my life. I'm not that kind of a person, but I think if I start doing it, my friends and family would really be surprised, and I want to do it, like paragliding or something.
Name a challenge you overcame that changed your life.
I think the biggest challenge was moving from a mindset wherein I was doing it all myself and thinking that I'll do it all myself, to a frame of mind wherein I'm making it more collaborative now, bringing in VC funds, bringing in partners to actually deliver it. That change of mindset happened after a huge challenge of being stuck in a specific size of business for a long period of time. And that's when I thought I need to pivot to a more collaborative approach and making a business rather than doing it yourselves.
Who or what inspires and motivates you?
Uncle Scrooge.
Nice answer. I like that one. What does success mean to you?
Well, if my friends and my family all are successful, then I'm successful.
And what advice would you give to your young self?
Decide and be wrong rather than keep thinking and decide the right thing.
Amazing. Well, Nishant, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. So much information there. All right, groundbreaking stuff. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Stuart. It was great speaking with you.
You've been listening to Construction Cashflow. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so you never miss an episode. And remember, the faster cash flows, the faster wealth grows.